Hello everybody, Maven here, and last week Bungie revealed the brand new Onslaught Mode, or the Horde Mode if you will. It's a mode where you're on a Crucible map, you gotta defend an area against waves of enemies. They said there's an easy playlist mode that you match with randoms, it's 10 waves long, but then there's a hard mode that you want a dedicated fire team for that goes up to 50 waves long and gets as tough as a Grandmaster Nightfall. So today I wanted to share my personal top 3 builds on each class to bring into the new Onslaught mode to farm it reliably. So just a few notes about this mode before we get into it. It looks like there's a currency system kind of like the coil where you rack up points and then you can save them up and spend them to upgrade your turrets and put up electrical fences and traps to stop the onslaught of enemies. And they noted that each wave is going to have like a little objective to it, and if you can complete that objective in the given amount of time, you will be granted a heavy ammo crate. So things like machine guns are going to be very, very good here because you're going to have infinite machine gun ammo essentially. So since there's going to be waves of trash mobs followed by tanky mini bosses, I wanted to put together this compilation of builds that are very good at ad clear, but also have the potential to do massive damage to a mini boss. That's what I'm kind of going for with these builds. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start on Warlock and then go to Titan and then Hunter. I'll leave timestamps down below if you want to skip around. And if the video helps you out, I appreciate if you subscribe if you are new, as I'm on my way to 50k and you can help me get there. And thank you so much if you do. Hope you enjoy. Alright, so we're starting off with Warlock, and our first build is going to be the Phoenix Protocol. Now, because we have 9 builds to go over today, I'm going to explain them very briefly. So because this is a mode where you have to defend an area against waves of adds and escalating difficulty, of course the Phoenix Protocol is going to be a beast, especially if you have 2 of them on your fire team. You're going to be able to chain wells back to back and basically just be in a well for the entirety of Horde Mode. No doubt this is going to be a top tier pick in this mode, especially the difficult version that goes up to the level of Grandmasters. So when it comes to the actual build itself, there's really not much to it. It's very flexible. Just hit tier 7 intellect, throw on any weapons you like, and you're pretty much good to go. So you can see a little snippet of my personal loadout here. I got Solar Surge and Strand Surge with Strand Reserves because I'm going with double strand weapons. I got the Scatter Signal as well as the Coraxus's Distress. Now the Cataphract is a better DPS heavy GL, but since it's going to be a fast-paced activity where you have to really quickly defend an area against hordes of mini-bosses, I think you're going to want to preference probably burst damage over sustained damage because you might not have a lot of time. So personally, I'm going to try the Coraxes, but I may potentially go back to Cataphract. And next up, we got the good old Osmiomancy Gloves turret spam build, you know, because you got to defend an area. There's few corridors that enemies can rush in from, so you just block those with the stasis turret, and you're pretty good to go. Just lock down the battlefield and make it real easy on yourself. Now the setup I'm actually going for here is with the Buried Bloodline because, you know, not only is Devour good for healing, but when you have Devour active, you get granted grenade energy on final blows. Pair that along with a Demolitionist machine gun, which is why we got Void Reserves because we got 2 Void weapons, and we generate a lot of energy for our stasis turrets. And then on top of that, we got a stacks on stacks charged up setup here with Grenade Kickstart for even more spam. But if you don't have the Buried Bloodline, you can go with any good Demolitionist weapon setup, really. It doesn't really matter too much. But you can also go with the Glacial Harvest version with the Aegir's Scepter along with Elemental Charge on your boots. That should be very consistent for Grenade Kickstart as well. And next up is the Necrotic Thorn build, and just take a look at the background gameplay when I ask you the question, will this build be good in Onslaught mode? Oh yeah. Absolutely. You shoot one shot and suddenly everything in the area just disintegrates. This build is absolutely the master of collateral damage in Destiny 2. Nothing even comes close. And now with this version, I am using a Grapple with -1 Invocation, but you can also do a version with the Shackle Grenade so you can get Weaver's Trance, which I'll show in the next clip in the background gameplay when it comes to it. But yeah, the Thorn after the buff is ridiculous. When you pick up those Soul Devour Remnants, you now get 4 bullets overflowed into your magazine. You can get up to like 41 bullets, I think. Don't quote me on that. But between Soul Devour buff plus double Kinetic Surge, the Thorn hits like an absolute truck. Personally, out of all the 3 Warlock builds I showed you so far, this is the one I would personally choose because the ad clear and the damage output is just so stupid good, trust me. And between the combination of impact induction with threat of generation benefiting from the DOT of the Thorn with 100 discipline, you can also spam a lot of grapples with this build very easily, and that outputs a lot of damage as well because the grapple melee will also proc the poison on your Necrotic Grips. So yeah, I couldn't recommend this build enough. It is excellent, but if you hate the Thorn, personally, you can go with the Osteostriga, no problem. It's the same thing. Now moving on to Titan, obviously the first build we're going to talk about is Wormgod Caress on Strand. You cannot go wrong with this build because it is absolutely the most broken build in the game at the moment. Now, typically with this build, when you come across a boss, you set up a tangle point with the Navigator and then hot swap your loadout over to Tractor Cannon and then just go ham with the 1-2 punch shotgun. But I don't really believe there's going to be bosses too tanky to the point where we really have to do that. I mean, I could be wrong, especially when it gets to Grandmaster difficulty. But I would recommend this loadout if you didn't want to swap anything at all. So you have your Navigator, so you can set up a tangle point around a zone that has a lot of ad spawning and just grapple punch everything for absolutely free. And then you have your 1-2 punch shotgun when there's anything fat, and that should basically solve all your problems. But then I also have a Marcado 45 with Demolitionist and Golden Tricorn, and that allows me to spam grapples pretty efficiently. And between Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle on the artifact right now, it's very, very strong. And Golden Tricorn is stupid easy to proc on Strand Titan. You gotta get an ability kill, and Strand Titan probably has the easiest time getting ability kills out of any class in the entire game. Now, for those who are a little bit nitpicky, I do have Thread of Warding to make Into the Fray a little more consistent. But when the next season comes and we lose the artifact mods and we'll lose Unraveling Orbs, then you might want to consider Thread of Propagation in that slot instead. But for now, Thread of Warding is pretty good. And next up is the Arc Heart of Inmost Light Storm Grenade spam build. And you know, those roaming Thundercloud Storm Grenades on Titan are pretty strong for ad clear. And I did consider placing the Void Heart of Inmost Light build in the slot, but after the Demolitionist Shadow nerf, it doesn't feel as spammy as it used to. However, Arc subclasses in this game are definitely the most spammy ones because of the combination of Spark of Amplitude and Spark of Ions. So this build definitely has no problem spamming to its heart's content. And we do have the good old stacks on stacks charged up grenade kickstart variant with those boot mods like Absolution and Innervation to get a bunch of grenade energy. We want to use our thruster as much as possible to proc Powerful Attraction on our boost to scoop up all the orbs we are generating from the Spark of Amplitude. And then we have heavy-handed and impact induction on our gloves because we are trying to proc knockout as much as we can. And with all these things combined, especially with our Demolitionist Song of Iriute and our Demolitionist Iterative Loop, we can generate tons of storm grenades. However, shameless plug, I very recently did a video on this exact build, but with Buried Bloodline and Corrective Measure instead of this loadout that I have here. And I'm just going to put a clip in the background gameplay in 3, 2, 1, go. And this is with the Buried Bloodline with Devour active. And just look at how efficiently we're able to spam storm grenades. We can basically spam 4 storm grenades back to back. There's been many occasions where I had 3 roaming storm clouds on the battlefield at the same time. The spam is absolutely ridiculous. And another cool thing about the Buried Bloodline is you can apply Weaken before you use your Thunder Crash for some heavy damage. But if you do not have the Buried Bloodline, then the Witherhoard Iterative Loop Song of Iriute loadout works perfectly fine as well. And next up is the Severence Enclosure Bonk build. This build, in my opinion, has to be the most under the radar OP build in the game right now. Nobody's using it, but it's absolutely insane. I have been very, very impressed with the ad clear potential of this build because the radius and damage of those Severence Enclosure explosions are massive. And when you have the Roaring Flames aspect procced, it also counts your uncharged melees as charged melee, so it procs your Severence Enclosure explosions. So whenever you bonk or punch a trash mob, suddenly everything in a 10-meter radius just dies. But if they happen to survive, they get yeeted, they get bounced by the Severence explosion. It launches them into the air, so then they can't really attack you back. And because it's on solar, you know the survivability is great because you got that healing grenade with the infinite restoration from Ember of Empyrean. Now, my primary choice choice here is the Parabellum. You could also go with the Zali's Bane or whatever solar primary you choose, because we're using the Solar Surge. And then you got the Gallarhorn for boss damage. And then I have a Blinding Grenade Launcher. And personally, I've always loved to use Blinding Grenade Launchers on bonk builds, because you can just blind something so they don't fight back, and you just go sit in their face, bonking them down. Doesn't matter if they're a fat yellow bar. If they're blinded, they can't fight back, and you just bonk them all day long. So if you are a Titan main out there and you've never tried this build before, you absolutely need to try this. I'm telling you, this is a must-try build in my book. And finally, moving on to Hunter, starting off with the Renewal Grasp Dust-Filled Grenade Spam build. I did a video on this before. I mean, by the way, I've done build videos on like a lot of these builds before if you wanted to go and check them out. But yeah, my video on this was like grenade every 5 seconds. That was like the headline, you know? And it's true. Like with this build, you can literally throw another dust field in like 5 seconds every time. You always throw another dust field before your last one even runs out and leaves the battlefield. It's crazy. Because again, we got the good old stacks on stacks charged up grenade kickstart setup. But we also have elemental charge along with Grim Harvest. We pick up stasis shards to get armor charge as well as orbs. So it makes it really, really easy to get up to that 4 stacks of armor charge and just get tons of grenade energy off of kickstart. But then impact induction makes our stasis shurikens create grenade energy, and then we got whisper shards, so we shatter the stasis crystal that our renewal grasp generates in the middle of our dust field to make grenade energy. And then of course we also have our demolitionist weapons. And once again, we are using the iterative loop Witherhoard Song of Your Ute setup. This is just a setup that I feel is very good for grenade energy and like grenade spam builds. But again, just like before, you can go with corrective measure and buried bloodline if you so choose. Having Devour on a grenade spam build is a very excellent thing, and you can't go wrong. So yeah, having dust fills just blocking lanes and just, you know exactly where ads are spawning because you can see the animation. You can just shut down the battlefield with this build. It's going to be excellent in Onslaught mode. And next up, we have the Gyrfalcon's Bloodline build. I just did a build video on this one very recently, and this is easily one of the top 3 most broken hunter builds I've ever seen. This build, I'm telling you, is juiced. You need to try this if you're a hunter main. And also, in terms of synergy between your exotic weapon, your exotic armor, and your subclass, this is by far the most synergistic build I've ever seen in Destiny 2 history. So let me try to quickly break down the chain of events this build uses. So Gyrfalcon's Hauberk gives you volatile rounds when you emerge from invis, right? So we're gonna dodge to go invis with the Vanishing Step. And then the first enemy we're going to kill is going to proc Echo of Cessation. Defeating a volatile target creates a Void Breach. Also, Reaper is going to give us an Orb of Power. We pick that up, is going to proc Echo of Starvation to give us Devour. And then the Buried Bloodline Catalyst says that when we have Devour, our shots will weaken. And then Stylish Executioner says defeating a weakened suppressor volatile target grants invisibility, and every single enemy is going to be weakened and also volatile, so infinite invis. And then after that, we're going to start continually procking Echo of Harvest, because every shot's weakening, says defeating weakened targets creates an Orb of Power and a Void Breach. And then because of elemental charge and stacks on our boots, these Void Breaches and Orbs of Power are going to essentially give us infinite armor charge, so we can spam Special Finisher on our class item to have infinite special ammo for our entire fire team, as well as our Void Surge. And between our Void Surge and our Buried Bloodline Weakened Catalyst, our Buried Bloodline is doing about 34.5% more damage than its base damage, and it absolutely slaps. So this build will definitely make Onslaught mode incredibly easy. You definitely got to give this one a try. And the final build of the day is the Triton Vice Arc Hunter build. And I saved this one for the end because I knew that 97% of you guys would not humor this. But let me tell you, this build is one of my proudest Destiny 2 build creations I have ever made. I have done 2 videos on it before, and I'm even going to cover it a 3rd time once I get my hands on another glaive that I don't have yet. But this is one of the most effective ad clear builds ever, pretty much. So this build is very unique in the sense that it's using a glaive not like a glaive should be used. Like the Triton Vice got a buff recently, so when you're surrounded, you do double glaive melee damage. We don't care about that because we're never going to melee with the glaive unless we're just weakening a tankier target. We are using the glaive only for the projectile, so it's like a different entity entirely. So the Triton Vice has an ability where our glaive projectiles will detonate, and then our Unexpected Resurgence glaive has Volt Shot, and then we have Spark of Beacons, so our arc, special weapon, final blows create a blinding explosion. All these things together make our glaive an absolute weapon of mass destruction. And we can reload our glaive to proc Volt Shot blindingly fast because our aspect flow state allows us to. And then we are running the infinite special setup of stacks on stacks charged up and special finisher. And then we're dodging every chance we get to proc powerful attraction to scoop up all the orbs we're making from Spark of Amplitude, as well as Reaper, as well as Arc Siphon, so that we never run out of special ammo. We can just spam that finisher over and over. So we just walk around shooting, reloading, absolutely demolishing groups of ads. And if we get in some trouble, we can just block with our glaive, get like 99% damage resist, and just get the heck out of there. And then the rest of the weapons on the loadout are really up to you. Loadouts I'd recommend are something like the Wish Ender plus the Wendigo. There's also the Buzzard with Overflow and Kinetic Tremors, along with an Anarchy. And I believe Anarchy is going to be a very good weapon in this mode because you can just set up traps along the spawn points and enemies cannot really cross it. So that's it for this build, one of the funnest builds of all time. Give it a try, you won't be let down. So that was my top 3 builds on each class for Onslaught Mode, but like I said, we got some honorable mentions to go over to please the keyboard warriors. Starting off with the Warlock, obviously the Sunbracers is something that is a very good option. Maybe a little inconsistent at times because sometimes they get melee kills and it just doesn't proc the perk. But still, very strong build for ad clear, cannot go wrong with Sunbracers, but I just felt like those other 3 I covered earlier were better in my own opinion. And next up is the Arc Cenotaph Mask build with Cold Heart. I did a build video on this before if you want to go and check it out, and every time I use this build, I'm absolutely just blown away at how powerful the Cold Heart is with the Surges and the Arc Soul. And the Cenotaph Mask may or may not be super good for this build because you can mark those yellow bars and drop heavy ammo bricks for your fire team, but since we get granted heavy ammo crates, we don't know yet how relevant that's going to be. And next up is the Void Heart of Inmost Light build. I mentioned this earlier. It's very good because, you know, controlled demolition is very solid for survivability. You can give overshields to your teammates with Bastion. You can give weapons of light with the Bubble. It's just a very strong build that you really can't go wrong with. But I felt like in this mode, we really had to prioritize ad clear over everything else. And so I felt that Arc shined just a little bit more than this, but it's still a very solid build and good for team playing. And next up, we got the Assassin's Cowl on either Arc or Strand. Very solid builds. And ever since I did that video on the Assassin's Cowl Strand build, it has been my main build ever since. Every time I hop on Destiny to do anything, whatever it may be, this is always the build I default to. I'm addicted to it, and it is indefinitely my main build for the foreseeable future. And the final honorable mention is not a build, but a weapon, the Risk Runner. I think the Risk Runner can be a very good weapon in this mode because Bungie mentioned that we'll be going up against the Fallen and the Hive, and they both use a lot of arc damage. So the Risk Runner could be potentially insane. So keep an eye out for this one and definitely try it out. And that is gonna do it for this one. If I missed any insane Onslaught Mode builds, let me know down below in the comments, and I hope this video has helped you out. If it did, be sure to drop a like and a comment because interacting with a video like that really helps out the algorithm and goes a long way. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing as I am on my way to 50K and you can help me get there. And thank you so much if you do. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.